Hi,
All right.
Craig. Welcome to MovieJunk. How are you?
I'm good.
Oh
How
man,
are you, man?
doing well. And again, can't say how thankful I am to have you on. I know fans probably know you best as the cowboy. You were the cowboy in Casino, and one of the most popular scenes in the entire film. And you just recently snuck up on us in the Irishman. Your character
Yeah.
was influential in sending Jimmy Hoffa to prison.
When I actually auditioned, I auditioned for a couple of different characters in the film, and then they asked me to do a couple of scenes with a southern, like a Louisiana accent. So I wasn't quite sure why, but I did it obviously, and they called me and they said that I got cast as the character of Ed Parton. So I did my research and went back and read the book, and I thought, wow, this is like really a pivotal character that first that's friends with Jimmy Hoffa, and he kind of sets him up, to take the fall when Bobby Kennedy couldn't get him, the Get Hoffa squad. He tried for a long time, and because of my character, Ed Parton, wearing a wire, got Jimmy Hoffa thrown in prison for the very first time.
Yeah.
So as I read the book and I saw the scenes that were possible, that were going to happen, I thought, this is really a nice role. This is going to be really cool. I didn't even ask for a script. I figured, they'll get me whatever I need when I need it. And the first day of filming, there was no dialogue. There was nothing, and there was nothing scripted. And I'm thinking, okay, well, all right, maybe, he wants me to improvise because they asked me to improvise in the audition. And I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I'm pretty good with improvisation. And, given the parameters of a character, you tell me who it is. I did my research on him. So I was pretty confident I could roll with whatever was happening in the scene. But I ended up like the 2 days before when I got my sides, I ended up writing like the scene because now I know what's happening, right? And I know I had no dialogue in the scene. So ballsy me, right? I'm thinking, well, I want to do something, I want to say something here, and I wanted to make it obviously make sense. So I wrote this whole like scene between me and De Niro while we're sitting watching the Cuban Missile Crisis, in the background while Jimmy is doing his thing. So here I am thinking, I'm going to present Marty with a script, a change of the scene, and add some dialogue for myself. So ballsy me, I have the PA print out the file and the script, and I present it to him before we start shooting. And he's very generous. He's a great guy. He's there's a reason why he is where he is. I mean, obviously the talent notwithstanding, the talent obviously is there, but he's just a wonderful human being, compassionate, very caring, very considerate of everybody on set. So like I said, there were a couple of moments I had with the DA, actor named J.C. McKenzie, great actor, phenomenal actor, and we improvised some stuff which Marty liked. So I thought he was going to keep that in afterwards. And I did a little thing with Al, like one or two lines improvised with Al. But that was basically it. And like I said, I assumed that there was going to be a lot of dialogue given that character and how instrumental he was, in bringing Hoffa down. He never did use me for the courtroom scene. I don't know if you remember in the book.
Yeah, I have the
Oh yeah,
book.
yeah. Yeah. So Ed Parton comes into the courtroom in that trial, and unbeknownst to Jimmy Hoffa, right? He's like shocked. He sees Ed Parton. He says, "My God, it's Ed Parton," because he didn't expect him to come in and testify or what he was going to say. So that was never even in the film. They shot it with another actor that supposedly was in there talking about something. They were trying to grill him. So I couldn't figure out where my character fit in, how, what his thinking was, whether he wanted me to just improvise a lot of stuff because the guy who played the actor who played Tony Pro, British actor who's in Boardwalk Empire. Anyway, really good actor. He even said that his script, he had very little dialogue, and he picked and chose his spots, to improvise some things, and that whole thing with the time and everything that he did with the clock and the time coming into the meeting and all that. A lot of that was improvised. So I figured at that point, I'm going to have to throw in something, or what's the old saying? Better to beg for forgiveness than ask for permission.
Yeah.
So I kind of like I said, from that first day of filming, I'm like in my head going, well, I'm not even gonna try to improvise, or I'm feeling self-conscious now, where before I was a little bit more freer and felt comfortable to try anything. So I kind of like went into myself and became more introverted, which I probably shouldn't have done. I should have probably just did what I normally do with on a Scorsese set, is just improvise my ass off, right? Because that's probably what he was looking to do.
That's what I constantly hear, from interviewers and also some the folks that we've had the privilege of interviewing on the channel regarding The Irishman and worked with Scorsese, is that he allows the actor to bring in some more artistic liberties, right? So being able to use improv. And I mean, this wasn't your first time working with Martin Scorsese.
Right.
I know with this film, because I also had been following The Irishman for some time. I think it was in development for almost 9 years. And prior to it even being The Irishman, De Niro was researching a film that they were going to do called The Winter of Frankie Machine. And then researching for that film, he read, I heard you paint houses. And then while reading that, he said, hey, we actually this is what we probably need to do.
Right.
Led to the Irishman. And the movie was, tremendously successful. I think it was like 11 Oscar nominations. Definitely, I mean, the film was extremely successful.
And rightly should be, because the guy knows his shit, right? I mean, it's Scorsese. And then you have, you bring in Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Joe Pesci, Harvey Keitel. I mean, how can it not be, phenomenal? Like I said, I thought the character, the Ed Barton character, was going to be more involved and a little bit more, more stuff going on between me and Jimmy and that whole thing. Because if you also remember in the book, Jimmy, he has a meeting with Ed Parton, and he's trying to get Ed Parton to use his connection with Carlos Marcello, the mob guy down in Louisiana, to kill Bobby Kennedy.
Yeah.
So there was actual a situation where in the book it said that they had that conversation, Jimmy Hoffa and Ed Parton. So I'm thinking, I got these scenes with Pacino, I got the scenes with in the thing, and I'm thinking, man, this is really going to be a good role. It's going to be something I can really sink my teeth in.
Yeah.
So, but it didn't end up that way, and I was kind of not disappointed, but because I would have played a stool, in that movie. I mean, I would have been happy just being an extra and just being in the scene, just in the frame. Yeah. So, but like I said, I thought it was going to be, the role was going to be a little bit more meaty, a little bit more like it was in the book.
This film, I think the runtime was like 3.5 hours, and I think it was the most shot scenes, something like that. I mean, it was something. There's a couple records that were broken. So yeah, I mean, definitely, if it's something that you get, even if it's a few minutes, it typically, still takes a few days to shoot. How long did you actually work on this film?
I worked 5 days. Not consecutively. It was like 2 days, and then I had a weekend off or a couple days off, and then they came back for like 3 days. Yeah, it was just 5 days work.
And this wasn't the first time that you'd worked with De Niro, obviously, being Casino, but was this the first time that you
Right.
worked with Al Pacino?
Oh yeah, yeah. And
What
that
was
was
that
surreal.
experience like?
I mean, oh my God, I'm telling you, like, every movie that he's done. I mean, I've watched everything that guy's done, everything. And growing up in the '70s, I mean, being Italian American, you gravitate to certain actors, to certain directors, certain films, and like, I'm just sitting, looking at my idols, looking at these guys, and I'm thinking, there's something wrong with this picture. I mean, I'm from a small town in upstate New York. How am I? How did I get here? Like, why me? Like, how am I in this shot? How am I in this scene? How am I even here with these guys? And Pacino couldn't have been more gracious and nicest guy in the world. I mean, from PAs. I mean, he was like, he went out of his way to just make everybody feel comfortable, and just an incredible human being, just like, Bob and Marty are. They're just class acts all the way. I mean, just, not, like I said, not even given the fact that they're incredibly talented and they're incredible actors, but human beings. They're just really good human beings that a lot of people probably don't know. But I mean, it's just to everybody. I mean, just kind and so gracious and willing to try anything, And even with when we improvised something, he was like, it was amazing because he had no idea I was going to throw that line in, and he, like, bam, he was on the phone talking to De Niro, and I forgot what he said. He said something like, "Yeah, I got one with me right now." After I interjected while he's on the phone, I said something like, "Come down, Frank, come on down," or something. And I mean, instantaneously. I mean, he didn't even have to, like, think about it. A lot of actors, like, get like, well, what am I supposed to say next? That came out of nowhere. It just throws them. But he was right there. I mean, had no idea I was going to throw it in, and it was amazing. I mean, I apologized after. I said, I didn't mean to overlap your dialogue. And he goes, "No, man, no." He says, "That was great." He said, "There's a reason why Marty's chosen you for this." And, he says, it was good. So he put a stamp of approval on it, made me feel comfortable that it was okay to just say whatever I felt like saying.
And it's not every day
Thank you,
that
man. Thank
you
you.
could say that you've worked with Pesci, De Niro, and Pacino now too. So, yeah, definitely you hold your own. And the second I saw your character,
Thanks.
I've always been a fan of your role in Casino. So the second that I saw you return, I was like, that's him. That's the cowboy. And I had a feeling that your character was going to be influential in some part. And I like that you mentioned that you did some internal research, for your role, obviously, and kind of
Oh
created
yeah.
more of a persona than what was just on the script. Because I've interviewed some guests that had mentioned that they may have been in a different role or they auditioned for a role, and it sounds I was in The Irishman that ultimately didn't make it into the script, and it just seems like they had so much more story that they wanted to tell. And the fact that
Right.
your character being in Louisiana, you may have had some interactions with Carlos Marcello, and we know that it's possible that his involvement was directly connected to the JFK assassination. I actually
Right.
wanted to see more of that. We got some flashbacks of
Yeah.
JFK and the funeral. And when I saw the trailer, I was hoping that we were going to dig into that.
Yeah.
I see
Me
that
too.
I see that it was possible that they were going to do that, but maybe there just wasn't enough time.
Well, I always go over and reanalyze and rethink a lot of things, and I think, I mean, going into it, there was an actor that JC and I were kind of like shaking our heads. He made a comment like, they were shooting this scene with him in it, but they didn't come back towards the end of the day and shoot his coverage. So he was really pissed off, right? And JC and I, we didn't want to say anything to him, up front, but like afterwards, we were saying like, can you imagine this guy like, Mark, you should just be happy you got it. You're in this film. You're going to get a credit. You got a character. Just don't worry about your coverage because Marty's got things going on in his head. And I always looked at it as, listen, if I'm bankrolling a movie like this, who do I want to see? Do I want to see the main? I mean, I want to see. I'm paying for Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, and Harvey Keitel. That's it. I'm not paying to see. I don't want to see anybody else. I want to see these guys, these incredible, incredible actors, do their thing on film, and I could see them for 4 hours just doing their thing. That's all I want to watch. These other periphery characters are just periphery. They're set dressing basically. I mean, yeah, they may have a little bit of importance in the scene or whatever, but I want to see these guys work. So that's what I had imagined going in anyway. I knew that. So when I hear an actor say that, it's like, what are you nuts? I mean, really? I mean, are you that full of yourself? Just be happy you're in the film. Shut the fuck up and do your job and get your pay and get your credit and move on. Be happy you got picked out of a million guys that they could have chosen, or the actors that are probably 10 times better that they could have chosen, but you got chosen for whatever reason. Be happy because it's like hitting the goddamn lottery. I mean, getting cast in this industry is like hitting the lottery anyway. But on top of that, in a film like this, it's like, I mean, it's incredible what the feeling is like and what the situation is.
No, what I wanted to say is, the $1 million question, right? I know you read the book, you saw it in the film. Do you think that it was The Irishman that ultimately killed Jimmy Hoffa? Frank Sheeran.
Listen, I look at it from different views and different people that have talked and so-called like I watch these mobsters that talk and they all act like they know who did it and that this guy didn't do it, Sharon didn't do it. If Sharon didn't do it, he knew who did, or he was around somebody who did because there was just too many. And he was a top suspect for many years. FBI had him under surveillance. I mean, he was one of I forgot what it was, one of 10 possible suspects that could have done it. So, if he didn't do it, if he was trying to, make a little money in his old age, like everybody thought, to leave to his kids or whatever the case may be, maybe he had a bout with conscience and he wanted to get the story straight. He knew he was dying, right? So it was like a confession. I think probability wise, since there were many other conspiracy theories and thoughts on it, but I think it was pretty damn close to probably what really did happen. And the way it went down makes a lot of sense because the only people that were close to Hoffa were the only ones that could get to him. So you got a handful of guys that could lure him into that situation, and obviously Sharon was one of them. Was a highly trusted, and Sharon had loyalty to Buffalino, right? And Buffalino and his and the crew of mob guys, wanted him gone for obvious reasons. So that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I don't think they would hire like a hit squad or a different hitmen to do it. I think they had to do it that way, and I think strong possibility that he did do it. Yeah.
Have you ever seen if it was 1989 or 1990, the Jack Nicholson Hoffa? Have you ever seen that?
It's great. Great
movie,
version.
right? Directed
Yeah,
by
it was really, and he had him down. I mean, that's another obviously incredible actor. But Nicholson had his looks down, had his mannerisms down, had his inflections down. It was unbelievable. Yeah, I love that. I love that version.
That's how I was first introduced to Hoffa, is watching that movie, and that's kind of what I
Yeah.
kind of put it together. And then growing up and doing the research and kind of, here and he, Hoffa becoming the legend. So for me,
Sure.
my standards were really high. I know Al Pacino is the
Sure.
greatest of all time. I knew he was going to figure out a way to do it, but it was tough for me to not kind of compare the two roles. And
Right.
each actor
Right.
made it their own, right? Each one made it their own.
Sure.
So
Sure.
I can,
I think I think I think Nicholson looked a lot more like Hoffa than Pacino did.
yeah.
Um, obviously he did, but yeah, I mean, it's two different interpretations and two different storylines, right? Two different things going on. Um, yeah, I mean, hey, listen, uh, watching those guys work together, and those scenes that they had in the between Pacino and Joe Pesci, and the scenes between Joe Pesci and De Niro. The moments, they were phenomenal. I mean, just incredible. I wish there were more of those kind of intimate moments and stuff, because it really was like amazing. That whole Frank Sheeran appreciation night was incredibly shot, incredibly acted. It was brilliant, really was. Brilliant filmmaking, brilliant acting. It was just perfect.
But how good was that scene? You mentioned the Frank Sheeran appreciation night, that scene between
Yeah,
Joe Pesci and Al Pacino. And,
yeah,
Jimmy Hoffa is unleashing about, his frustration, but he's not directly demonstrating his frustration towards Russell. So it was just, in seeing Joe Pesci
right.
react, it was just brilliant. I think that was also the first time that we had a scene between Joe Pesci and Al Pacino ever.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
He just did not, because he had taken a little bit of a hiatus from acting, and you were,
right.
I mean, I want to jump into Casino, but I mean, what was it like, just seeing Joe Pesci kind of come back, into this genre? Um, to me, this goes up there as one of his best roles of all
Yeah,
time. He gets an Oscar nomination as well out of it.
yeah.
What was your thought process on seeing Joe Pesci now in The Irishman?
Well, I got to know Joe offset, and we'd run into each other. De Niro had a piece of a restaurant in L.A. called Ago, and all those guys used to hang out there. It was really kind of cool. And Paulie Herman, who's a good friend of Bob De Niro's, he's a good actor. He was on Sopranos. He was the manager of the place, so he would always hold court, and it was kind of cool because everybody knew each other. Everybody was cool. Everybody kind of let everybody do their own thing there, but it was like a really cool place to hook up and just kibitz with everybody and have a drink, or you know and be informal, and everybody just kind of being relaxed. So I would see Joe there a lot because I used to go there all the time. I loved the place. It was great food and a great place to hang out. But I'd see him there, and we'd run into each other in a couple other places and see each other. So we got to be on a friendly basis. And I mean, he always would come over to me and give me a big hug and, hey, Craig, how you doing? And remembered what we had talked about previously. It could have been maybe 3 or 4 years prior, but it was very nice. And he's another guy. He's really a really down to earth, just a really cool guy, and then very outgoing. Where Bob's, quiet, doesn't really like to talk a lot or get into personal stuff. But Joe's kind of the opposite. But yeah, I was so happy uh, to see him, and get to talk to him again after all those years. But he's just another guy that, there's when you look at mob movies, okay, and then you look at the knockoffs, and then you see the people who try to emulate those roles or try to be real in those roles. There's a few handful of guys that can pull it off, and obviously this is the A list of those guys. They have an innate sensibility about them that you can't act it. You know what I mean? You either you either inhabit those characters, you have a firm grasp of where those characters are, and where they actually live inside, and how they can, you know, expound on it and bring it out on film. And these guys they're the A-list, the A plus A-list of actors that can pull these characters off. So when you can assemble a cast like that, like when I like you said it was in development for 9 or 10 years. I had started following it when the scuttlebutt was first going around about it, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm getting really into it. Like, somehow, some way, I got to get an audition on this project. If I never work again, if I don't even care about seeking out other roles or doing it, I got to somehow find a way to be a part of this movie. And I reached out to Charles Brandt early on, introduced myself and blah blah blah, but I never really approached Marty or Bob or anybody, until I knew that they were underway with casting. It was it's too premature to do anything that far ahead. So yeah, I knew some way, somehow, by the grace of God, I was gonna say my prayers and beg God to somehow get me into this project, and thank God, it worked out.
Not just saying this because I have you on today, but Casino and The Irishman are my two favorite mob films. Both films that you
Wow.
incidentally starred in. And I do want to make a sure, because I can talk about The Irishman for hours, and I love
Yeah, me too.
the ability as a fan to be able to interact with the stars of one of, I already put it as one of the best, not just mob films, but films of all time. But you were also in Casino, and you
Right.
play a
Yeah.
member of, you were part of Joe Pesci's crew. You had that memorable scene with De Niro when you're playing poker and you got your feet on the table, and they use your
Right.
head to kick you out of the casino. Use his head to open the door. I want to
Yeah.
hear how it all started. How did you first hear about the role? I mean, because this is, I think 5 years after Goodfellas. So like, we were waiting
Right.
for the next Scorsese mob film to see De
Right.
Niro and Pesci together. But how did you first hear about the role, and how'd you land it?
Well, I was in between agents, and I had moved back to Vegas, which was my biggest mistake. I had signed with an agent named Harry Gold. It was a tremendous agent in LA. He now represents Jesse Plemons, who was in The Irishman, who's also in
Boardwalk,
Marty's new movie.
Boardwalk.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad.
yeah. I mean, he's done a ton of work. Nice guy too, a nice guy, terrific actor. But I was with Harry Gold, and I made the mistake of chasing an ex-girlfriend back to Vegas, and I had just signed with Harry, and it was like the parting of the Red Sea. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but when you're an actor, you go into an audition and you're treated a certain way if you're with a certain agent. And I had a previous agent that really didn't have a good reputation, and they treat so you would automatically go into an audition and feel some kind of an aura coming back from the casting director. But when I signed with Harry, it was like the parting of the Red Sea. I'd go in, and everybody like looked at me like the new Messiah, like, here comes the new, the next whomever, great actor, right? So I made the mistake of going back to Vegas and wasting a year back there, and it was the biggest mistake of my life, because it was a turning point for me. Because had I had stayed with Harry, I booked my first job with Harry, and he got me into. It was a co-starring role. He got me into the TV Guide. First time I'd ever been in the TV Guide, and my name was announced opposite my co-star, and it was starting to happen for me. And I was getting in some really big movies, big shows, and getting great feedback, callbacks, and what have you. And it was, like I said, it was a turning point. So anyway, long story short, I go back to Vegas and I stay in Vegas for a while, and I get with a local agent there, because Harry didn't want to represent me anymore because I left, and I kind of just spaced everything, and he was like really building me up, trying to get my career where it should be, where it should have been. But I blew it. I blew it. So anyway, I'm with another agent. They had experience in LA, so they knew what to do. So I get a call that they're casting in Vegas for Casino, and they're casting the bit players and stuff. So I go in and I audition for Ellen Lewis, and she liked me. She put me on tape. Um, Several days later, I get the call that Robert De Niro liked my audition and wanted me to come in with him and Marty. So I'm thinking, man, this is amazing. Like, even if I don't get anything, because I never anticipated I would ever be able to get cast in this movie or work with these guys. So I go in totally like free of any kind of nervousness or anticipation or anything. I just kind of like, whatever it's going to be. I was just happy, and it was so surreal just sitting across from these guys, and doing an improvisation with Bob. And it was so cool because I wish I had that tape, because Marty was sitting like behind camera, or in front of camera, and Ellen Lewis was taping from that side, and I'm sitting across from Bob, and we start doing the scene, and like out of the corner of my eye I see Marty like kind of go like this. He sits up in his seat. So now I'm thinking, well, I'm onto something, right? So I'm throwing shit out there left and right. I have no idea. I never read the script. All I know is I'm reading like 2 lines, 3 lines of this character. I have no idea who the character is, but I'm thinking, okay, what can I do? So I start throwing stuff in, and De Niro's like back. It's like a tennis match, and I felt really good. I felt real comfortable with it. I felt very at ease with these guys. They made me feel very comfortable. I wasn't nervous at all, which was rare, because no matter what, there's always that kind of nervous energy, when you audition, especially when a callback and you're reading for the director, the producers, and you're under the microscope, and you either perform, you either do your thing and nail it, or next, you did a shitty job, and they don't want to hear from you again. So yeah, so I felt totally at ease with them. So they asked me a few questions afterwards, and we talked for a brief, maybe a minute, and that was it. And they said thank you. I got up, shook their hand, and I walked out. I thought, there's no way I'm going to get anything on this. And several days later, 3, 4 days later, Ellen Lewis calls me direct, which is rare, because they usually tell your agent, they let your agent tell you got the part. So the one thing that she did say, and that kind of blew me away too, was she says, Craig, congratulations, you got the part of the cowboy, which I didn't read for. It was for some, it was a different character. And she said, but Marty wanted me to ask you if you're okay if Joe Pesci slaps you, because in the scene there's a thing. I said, Miss Lewis, I said, look, he could hit me with a sledgehammer, he could punch me, he could set me on fire. I said, to be in this movie with these guys and have a scene with these guys, absolutely. I mean, no problem. I mean, I had been in a ton of barroom fights up to that point, so I'm like, what's a little slap gonna do? Absolutely.
Not if I'm not mistaken, you're 6'4", 6'5", and Joe
It's
Pesci
five, yeah.
5'4", 5'3", and you tower over him.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
It was, and like we had when the my first day of filming was actually the first day of principal photography on Casino. It was the very first scene of the very first day was my scene with Joe, when he reprimands me with the phone and tells me to go back and apologize and all that. And so that was interesting, because everybody, it's all, everybody's getting to know each other. It's the first day of filming. There's a lot of tension there, and a lot of excitement, and what have you. and uh, and so we did 13 takes of that, and I'm thinking in my head, like, I don't want to say anything. Like, I'm going to let him tell me what he wants. If he wants something different, he'll tell me. If he doesn't, he's just going to let it play out. And so, I mean, I don't know these guys. I've never worked with them before. I don't know what their habits are or what they're doing. So I just said, I'm going to let the director direct me. If he doesn't see something he likes, he's going to tell me, or he's going to give me some kind of a hint or something that he wants me to do. So, I mean, and Joe was like so nice, and he said, Craig, we could cheat it. I don't have to slap you. I said, Joe, let's do it, man. Just do it for real, man. I said, don't worry about it. I says, and he tried to make it as less painful as it could, but it was like after the 13th take, I'm like, man, enough already. Like, okay, like, to at least tell me, and that was it. So he had gotten whatever reaction he wanted from me at that point. But
I actually want to correct myself. You've worked with four legends. I forgot to mention Don Rickles,
oh, Don Rickles, yeah,
who's my favorite comedian of all time. I put him and Rodney
yeah,
Dangerfield are my two favorite stand-up comedians. But you worked with Don Rickles, who his character was, or he was in technically the Irishman. There was a Don Rickles. I
right.
hate myself I didn't ask. What was it like working with him? You were kind of mean to Rickles, the pit boss.
Well, the thing is, I did an improvisation with him too, and I thought it was very good. And Joe ended up using the lines that I said to Rickles later on, and I was kind of upset because I went off and was very, ethnically slurring, and that just came to me, and Marty laughed. I mean, yelled cut afterwards, after the scene played out. They all started laughing, and Rickles was like, he says, I know Bob De Niro, and he doesn't like that you called me that. And, we were joking around. And I said, I'm so sorry. I said, it's just the character. I said, I'm not, anti-Semitic. I like everybody. I don't have anything against anybody's ethnic, background or whatever. So, it was funny. We had that running gag, but yeah, I was throwing in all kinds of stuff with Rickles and even with Bob. And I'm the first one to admit that, okay, maybe if I improvised something, it wasn't that good, but I know what I did was good, and Marty it condensed it right down. He eventually sent me my trims, and that was another amazing thing that he went in and editing because I had asked for my trims so I could put them on my demo reel, and he sent me the whole scene that was supposed to play out because I go back and apologize to De Niro afterwards, and I'm like minding my p's and q's, and there's a whole nother scene that he had to cut out because of the time constraint, but he actually took it upon himself to do the voiceover that Bob De Niro was supposed to do in explaining that I came back apologetic, and look at this big hick. He came back and apologized, whatever the line was. So he actually took the time out, and that's what I'm saying. Getting back to the class and integrity and just thoughtfulness and caring that these guys have. I mean, this guy is the best of the best, and he had time to actually go in with Thelma, his editor, and cut this whole thing for me and send it to me. I just wanted the trims. I didn't expect that at all. But that's the mindset, that's the class, and that's the incredible humanitarian kind of person that he is, and the kind of thoughtfulness that he has for his actors. So they cut that whole thing. He recut it and sent it to me, which was amazing. I mean, I had Bob De Niro, Joe Pesci, and then I have Martin Scorsese doing a voiceover for me. In the scene that obviously Bob De Niro was supposed to do. It didn't get better than that. I was like, listen, if I died tomorrow, I'm happy. I mean, and I reached where I wanted to reach, even though it wasn't a starring role or it wasn't, the lead or whatever. I still got to work with the best of the best, and that's how I look at it.
I'm trying to remember, and if I'm remembering the scene correctly, but wasn't Frank Vincent standing there as well too, right?
Yeah,
When Joe Pesci. So you had a chance to work with Frank Vincent as well too, who the real life Frank Collada, that character was kind of based on him. Did you get a chance
absolutely.
to meet with Frank Collada as well? Who just recently passed.
Well, yeah, and actually, we talked briefly on the set in lunch. It was funny because we'd all break for lunch and go up to the. We were shooting in the Riviera at the time, and they had this whole uh, great buffet and everything set up for us in one of the rooms, one of the convention rooms in the Riviera. And I'm sitting there with a couple of other actors and everything, and Collada was sitting off by himself, and I didn't know who he was at the time. And one of the actors I was sitting with said, "Yeah." I said, "Who's that guy over there?" They said, "Oh, that's the rat," you know. And so it was almost like nobody wanted to talk to him. Like all these actors that had worked, on in Raging Bull and in Goodfellas that I was sitting with that happened to be in my scene with me in Casino. It's funny how they just disassociated themselves and they like looked down on him, and I kind of felt bad for him. I mean, I was like, the poor guy is sitting all by himself. So the next day, I go and I sat with him and ended up talking to him a little bit. And years later, we got to be pretty good friends because we had done this thing in Vegas together with Henry Hill and a couple of the other guys and a couple of mob informants, and we would do like this impromptu show around Vegas at the library at the Flamingo Library. So it was interesting because I got to know him pretty good, and we actually did. I shot a pilot for a series I wanted to do. It was kind of like the John Favreau show. I don't know if you remember Dinner for Five. It was a show he had on that he would bring all of his actor buddies on, and they would talk about the films they did and then when they worked together. So my concept was bringing all these mob guys together to do a show, to do like a Dinner for Five, and kind of like mix them up with some FBI guys and what have you. So we got to be fairly close, and he's scary, very scary character, very scary man. Not a big guy, another shorter in stature, but there's something about him just scared the shit out of me. He just had a way about him that that this guy is he's a killer. He's an ex-killer.
Actually had the privilege of speaking with him. So I'm sure you know. I mean, he
Oh,
used to do the tours in Vegas.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
the first I heard about that, I wanted to take advantage of that, and I actually called him, and he returned my call and left me a voicemail. And
Oh,
I hope I actually was trying to look for it, but I think the voicemail got deleted. But
yeah.
I called him back, and he answered, and I spoke to him for maybe like 15 minutes. And I'm bummed that I didn't have this podcast back then. I would have loved to have him on and just to kind of pick his brain. But fortunately, he had his own podcast and he did several interviews.
Yeah.
So you were able
Yeah.
to kind of get into his mind, and he was just awesome because he goes back to old Chicago Mafia, and you get to hear
Yeah.
stories.
Sure.
So, yeah, definitely. I can just listen to him, talk for hours. Really interesting guy, but he had that persona to where, like, if you pissed him off, you didn't want to double cross him. So
No. No, not at all. No, he was the kind of character that you don't make fun of him. You don't say anything because originally when I had reached out to a good friend who just passed away, Dennis Griffin, who wrote a couple of books with Frank, and that's how I got to hook up with Frank again, was through Dennis, and very nice guy. But he had mentioned to me, he said, Craig, he said, let me just give you some advice. When you first meet with Frank, he said, a lot of these guys who want to do these shows with him or interview him, they kind of make fun of him, his accent and how he talks and everything. He said, try not to say anything, demeaning or derogatory about his accent or bust his chops. I says, no, absolutely not. I would never do that. But I remember him giving me that kind of warning because, this guy is a very volatile character. I mean, I'm not afraid. Listen, I've been in a lot of fights and a lot of things, but you can't fight a gun, right? The guy pulls out a gun or a knife, if you're caught off guard. So, I mean, if I had to fight this guy one-on-one for any reason whatsoever, I know I'm going to win. I'm not worried about that. It's just, how is this guy going to, if you piss him off, how is he going to get even with you? You know what I mean? He's going to come at you when you're not expecting it. He's going to do something and mess you up. So that was the part that is scary, is that this guy wouldn't think twice about taking your life if he wanted to.
Being in Vegas during the times that you were kind of growing up, there was still some heavy mob influence as well
Oh,
too. And you have the size. Did you ever get poached by any of these real guys for you to kind of join one of the families?
well, interesting enough that now that you bring it up, uh, oh, how do I say
And if
this now?
if you can't share with us, totally understand as well.
No, it's not that no. And I listen, I was brought up, in a small town in upstate New York, and Russell Buffalino was the guy, but, he wasn't really considered. I mean, all the Italians, like we all hung out, on the north side of Endicott, New York, and everybody knew each other. They spoke of Russell, but they spoke quietly, and he wasn't really considered, a top level guy. He was just like a knockaround guy that, we used to be a mechanic, so nobody really took him. Nobody knew the power that he had, obviously, and I never knew it until this movie came out, until I read more about him, that he was like at the top. He was at the top of the heap. And even though he bounced around in this small little town and lived and worked amongst people, he was nobody to mess with, and he was a big shot. These were like all, I call them junior mob men. A lot of these young punky kids that were running around that were close to my age. I was like 19 when I moved to Vegas, just getting ready to turn 20. But I would hang out in these clubs, and these little junior wise guys were rich kids, but they were like kind of the punky rich kids who got other kids to fight their battles for them, and they were sons of like these rich casino owners and big time, politically connected figures. Because when I moved there, it was a very small town, and everybody knew each other, and everybody was like leery of each other. It was still like the old days, and the mob didn't, was a strong presence. But I always looked at these punky kids as, jokes, because I had to learn to defend myself at an early age and become pretty good with defending myself. So, long story short, I befriended a family. I'm not going to say who, but they were very well connected. I didn't know that they were connected with some nefarious characters, because they were very well connected politically, and they were on the hierarchy of the gaming industry and what have you. But I had become friends, and years later I found out that they were wondering who I was, because I got into a beef with this kid whose father owned this nightclub called the Brewery. It was a big nightclub, one of the best clubs in Vegas at the time, and all of a sudden, he was telling the bouncers for whatever reason not to let me in the club. So whatever the beef was, I found out years later, and I confronted him, but I confronted him immediately about it. I didn't know what it was until later on. But anyway, he had gone to this family, and asked some questions about me. And I found out that he lived in the same apartment complex. He was living with his mother that I was living in, but he was the son of this guy. So I found out who he was, and I wrote a note on his car window. I said, "Look, if you got any problems with me, because I assume now I'm thinking, right? I'm thinking this guy is either he is connected to the mob or he's not, or he's got whatever. So I'm thinking, how am I gonna like get out of this and try to scare him in a way, but still retain some kind of dignity and strength. So I wrote him a note. I said, look, you want to go to war? We'll go to war. I said, I got people in upstate New York. I'll bring them out and we'll go to war. And I used that phrase. And after that, the guy, like, I don't want to say kiss my ass, but he was very nice to me. And he had asked people. So when he had asked who I was, where I came from, they found out about that whole Appalachian thing because I grew up right near there, and the whole Appalachian convention with Joe Barbara, and my family kind of knew people that knew them and knew the Barbars and what have you, and came over from Italy, my grandparents with them. So they left me alone. The minute I said that, and I used that, and I didn't have any connections. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know Russell Buffalino. I didn't know Joe Barbara. I was talking out of my ass, right? Because I didn't want to die. I mean, I didn't know if these guys were going to put me in the desert, what they were going to do. And it come to find out it was because this guy's girlfriend hit on me and liked me, and I started dating her, but I didn't know she made it seem like she was single. And he found out about it, was pissed off, and so he was trying to threaten me or have me kicked out of the club. And so indirectly, I had become friends with these guys that he had reached out to who were connected. So they assumed that I was connected or back in New York, and that I was like sympathetic to the mob lifestyle, I guess you would say. And I respected those guys. My family were hardworking immigrants from Italy. They came over, they worked hard in the factories. None of my relatives or anybody were ever connected to the mob, never worked in the mob, never had anything. But growing up in that atmosphere, you know people. I mean, the Italians kind of stuck together, so they all knew each other, or they all, conversed. And so it was even though you might know that these guys are mob guys and you're friends with them on a different level, there's a level of respect there, and there's a level of secrecy, and nobody talks, nobody says anything. It's like everybody keeps their mouth shut, and you respect it for what it is. But so I, like I said, that was a defense mechanism, and it worked because inadvertently I became very good friends with these people. They kind of took me in as a surrogate member of the family, and I learned quite a bit, of life, in both realms of the reality at that time. So I was pretty fortunate.
One thing that I forgot to mention as well too is that in Casino, this was also, if I'm not mistaken, Steve Sciarippa's first role, and he was in the scene where Joe Pesci's stabbing the guy with the pen. And
Right.
did you get a chance? I don't think your two characters shared any scenes together. And we're a huge, Sopranos podcast as well too. But did you get a chance to meet with Steve Sciarippa, Bobby Bacala?
I know Stevie. I know him very well.
Wow.
Steve moved to Vegas from Brooklyn the same year I moved from upstate. And he was a bouncer in the Jubilation, which was Paul Anka's place. There were only really two nightclubs in Vegas at that time that were worth going to, and he worked at one of them, and we became good friends. And then he eventually went to work at the Riviera. Was a maitre d. Started off as a maitre d in the Riviera, and then they promoted him to head of the entertainment department, and he would book all those acts and everything. But I never knew, he never let on, he knew I was a struggling actor, and I was doing some theater and studying in Vegas, but he never let on that he wanted to be an actor or anything. I had no idea. And then I knew Joey DePinto, who was the guy who gets stabbed. Him and I did a movie. We produced a movie together, and we were very good friends, Joey DePinto and I. And we had no idea that either one of us had gotten cast in Casino until we did, until afterwards. But anyway, yeah, Stevie was in that scene with Joey when Joey gets stabbed with the pen, and that was the first time that I knew Stevie wanted to be an actor. And then all of a sudden, the whole, obviously the whole industry, if you were, somewhat connected, knew about what The Sopranos was going to be. And then I think some other actors had mentioned it too. But when I first heard about The Sopranos, I thought, wait a minute, it's called The Sopranos. All right. Then it's about a guy who's in therapy. It's a mob guy who hates his mother. I'm going, these are like completely opposite ends of a spectrum of what a mob guy typically is, right? I mean, all Italians really adore their mothers, at least the ones I know, uh, and cherish their mothers. And the mob guys, you never heard of them going to therapy, right? So I'm thinking, what kind of a show is this, right? I mean, I don't even want to go in and audition on this thing because it's not. It's going to be a piece of garbage. And look what happened. It just blew up. It turned out to be what it was, and Stevie got cast. He went to New York and made his career, made his life. I just talked to him a few days ago, actually.
I had the privilege of going to the Talking Sopranos show. It was actually in Mesa, Arizona, so we got a chance to see Steve, Michael
Ah,
Imperioli, Vincent Pastore as well too. I mean, for me as
yeah.
a Sopranos fan, I was in awe. And
Oh, yeah.
this was
Yes.
just coming from, I think it was a few months before that. I went to the Sopranos Con, the Mom Movie Con. So this was like 4 or 5 months of just heaven for me. You know what I mean? But yeah,
Sure.
I saw Steve in person, and I probably watched every single Talking Sopranos episode. Maybe missed one or two here and there.
Yeah.
I love what they did. Just being able to
Me
dissect
too.
the episode. Huge fan of his.
Yeah, the chemistry was great. I love and Steve with his motherfucks the world thing and he hates Pat Cooper and I was very good friends with Pat Cooper and he hates Pat and I asked him, I said, after he did the show, and I asked him, I said, was it pertaining to this one particular instance and was that the reason why you hated Pat? And he goes, yeah. I said, well, okay. I can understand, but I knew Pat on a different level. But yeah, I mean, his similarities. I mean, he hates Robert De Niro. He comes right out and says, "Fuck Robert De Niro." And I couldn't figure out why. I have no idea why he would hate Robert De Niro. But and I haven't asked him. I should probably ask him that next time I text. We text back and forth once in a while. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's a nice guy. I mean, we always got along. He used to comp me into the shows whenever I wanted to go see a show at the Riviera or whatever. He was always gracious and very nice. And we'd see each other. We had mutual friends. We'd hang out, once in a while. But yeah, I mean, great guy. Glad he had the success that he had, with that show.
And Craig, I just want to be respectful of your time. I want to, keep going, for a few more hours. And I also want to, I always use as an excuse to get you guys to come back for round two. Can't say how
Sure.
thankful I am to have you join the podcast. Again, you were in two of my favorite mob films of all time. So just
Thank
getting
you.
a chance to hear your stories and your journey through all these these wonderful films, and also get to talk shop about Sopranos. I mean, it's for me, it was a hat trick. So just want to thank you again.
Yeah, me too.
Definitely want to bring you back in for round two sometime.
Yeah. Sure. Anytime. Anytime. Yeah. Just let me know. And I just wanted to, I would thank you as well for reaching out and wanting to do this with me. And I can talk shop and talk film and mob films and mob guys and everything for days. So I'm very happy that you reached out. I'm glad you did, and much success with your podcast and with your site, with your YouTube site. I'm a subscriber and I'm a fan now. So
Thank you. Thank